That message always makes me laugh. Welcome everyone to our wonderful Community Development Commission, our regular meeting for August 23rd, 23. And I'm going to call this meeting to order at 3:32. And we'll start with a roll call.
Commissioner Hughes,
Here.
Chair Villarreal,
Present.
Commissioner Torres. Commissioner Torres.
Oh, I
It
think
looks
you
like she
dropped
just
it.
fell off.
Okay, Commissioner Brott.
Present.
And I did see that Commissioner Watkins was trying to join.
And we'll wait till Rosario joins because then we'll have a quorum. Rosario, can you hear us now? Oh, it's kind of frozen. Oh, no. Can you hear us now, Rosario?
Yes, it threw me out. I don't know why, but I'm back in.
Okay, it seems like you have a slow internet connection because your picture's freezing. So if you need to turn off the camera, that's fine.
Okay.
So you're present, right? Oh no, did she disappear? Oh no, she's there. Commissioner Torres,
Commissioner Torres,
I'm here.
thank you.
and you want to call the other members?
I'm sorry, on my screen, I don't see. Let me see.
We have Commissioner Kenny Geyer, who's excused, and Commissioner John Padilla is excused, and Commissioner Watkins is trying to log on, so. But we do, Tony, do we have a quorum then?
There's 4 present.
Okay, then we have a quorum. Great, thank you. Let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any changes from the commissioners? All right, what is the wish of the commission? Get a- Say that again, Commissioner Hughes. Did you make a motion? We didn't hear it.
Sorry.
Well, I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second, all right, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Oh, I guess I can't do that, huh? We're still on Zoom. I can't wait till we actually have a meeting in person when we get situated. But Tony, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Brott,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes,
Madam Chair Villarreal,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, motion passes. We are moving on to the approval of the minutes from our July 19th, 2023 meeting. Were there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff, Madam Chair.
Any changes, amendments from commissioners? All right, can I get a motion then?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Your motion first.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And Tony, can you do the roll call, please?
yes, ma'am. Sorry about that. Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Brott,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
yes,
Madam Chair Villarreal,
Yes.
thank you.
Excellent. Motion passes. We don't have an executive session, so we'll move on to the discussion agenda. Do we have anybody?
Just saw like a handful of little develop.
Yeah, or, maybe can mute, maybe it's coming from Ken. We just hear background noise, Ken. So we're on agenda 6 for discussion item. We're going to review the 2023 through 2027 citizen participation plan for activities associated with the City of Santa Fe Community Development Block Grant Program as required by Section 104A2 of the Housing and Community Development Act and by regulations at 24 CFR 570.486A6, and Cody's going to explain what this is. Very bureaucratic caption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so we are updating our citizen participation plan, which we are required to have on file by HUD. And this body can approve it, but it does need to go through a public comment period of 30 days. So I sent it all to you all for just to provide early comments and review. And ideally we'd get those back. I think we're looking for 2.5 weeks out by September 8th. And just early comments, anything that pops out to you. And then after that, we will finalize the language, get it translated into Spanish, post it to our website and notice, and then run the 30-day public comment period and finalize it, and then bring it back to you all for public comment or for final approval. And I'll just show it to you all real quick, just to show you some highlights. So, right, can you all see it?
Yes.
So it is a very HUD bureaucratic key, as Councilor Villarreal mentioned. It basically just outlines what the community development block grant is, the covered programs, the various requirements for CDBG, and then our community engagement process for the various reports and plans that we have to submit to them. I think the places that you might want to pay attention to the most are the public notice and public comment and public hearing summary table. This is pretty similar to the one we had on file already. The big difference is the triggers for significant amendments or substantial amendments to our consolidated plan and annual action plan. Before, we had a pretty low trigger threshold. So anytime I believe that we transferred $20,000 or a program's budget increased or decreased by $20,000, that triggered a substantial amendment, which requires a full 30-day public comment period and a public hearing. So now we change that to an increase or decrease in the budgeted amount for a project that exceeds 50% of the original budgeted amount. This will reduce the likelihood that we have to create a substantial amendment and go through this process, and it makes us a little bit more nimble. And yeah, so we're just have that with you all. So please review that and let us know if you have any comments. Director Ladd, do you have any additional things to add?
I do. I think a couple of points. The significant amendments still will happen if we change a project or cancel. I think if we cancel a project too, right, Cody?
That's correct, yes.
So it's not, all we're doing is, I think one year we had some funds that weren't spent in one project, but we couldn't move them over because that meant a substantial amendment and we didn't have time to get it done before the end of the year, blah, blah, blah. So this just gives us a little bit more administrative flexibility, but it's not going to change the projects that the public has reviewed and given comment on at all. The other point to make too, that our communications folks are working on a much sort of more innovative way of communicating with the public, a whole policy and procedure for outreach and communication, which is exciting because I think the city has made some good progress in the last couple of years with hiring people who know how to do graphics and write little catchy newsletters and stuff that we have never done particularly well in the past, but they're policies and procedures aren't done yet. And we thought, let's, instead of waiting for that, we'll get our plan approved, but the policies and procedures will become an attachment. So I think there's language in the plan that says at any point, we will follow those policies and procedures to make sure we're using innovative and alternative and different ways of communicating. And it's not just, well, we put the public notice in the New Mexican, and who the heck reads that? So that is another piece to this that is not part of it yet, but it will be.
Great, thank you. Any other points, or Cody or Alex, that you wanted to bring up?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
Great. Just clarification on our draft that we had in the packet. It says on the cover, approved by the CDC, and it has today's date. So I think you adjusted that on your,
I did, yeah. Now it just says to be submitted for approval to, so I will change that in the attachment.
okay, great. So any folks have any questions about this process or the document? You know, my understanding is really it's a standardized and formulaic requirement of HUD. I think it is important about citizen or community participation requirements, but there is a template you all have to also follow. Is that correct, for CDBG and HUD related?
Yeah, there's required sections to the citizen participation plan.
Right, including the word citizen.
Yes, that's what they call it.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to open it up to the commission for any questions or comments.
Just, Madam Chair, what's the recommend, what are you asking us to approve or recommend today? Yeah, or are we just getting input from you?
This is, well, Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just to review and have you take a look at what will be eventually submitted, but if there's any questions or changes, then you can direct them to Cody, and then there is a.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're not voting today.
All right.
Yeah, this purely informational. We just wanted to let you know what we're up to and on these fronts, and then bring it to you all first, just before we translate it and put it out for public comment.
That's a lot of good information, really good data that I think is worth sharing when the time comes.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any other questions or comments?
And Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt. If I encourage anyone, if you have a great idea for like, why don't we do whatever, please suggest it. Because we have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we put in there for our methods. You know, we didn't want to get too out on the ledge because we wanted to make sure that everything was doable and that it didn't either contradict or create problems for our communications team who are handling most of the city's communications. But please, I encourage everyone, just if you think of something that seems off the wall, who cares? Let us know and we'll see if we can kind of spice it up a little bit.
Thank you, Alex. Commissioner Torres, you have your hand up.
I'm wondering if it would be appropriate at this time to say something to HUD about the proposed ballot initiative, and say just that this is something to supplement what will be available if it passes, or is it better to wait? I don't know. Is that something that maybe we should include in this or not?
Are you referring to the what
The
will be
tax, the
happening?
excise tax.
Well, I'm wondering for this document, this is the citizen participation plan, and are you referring to what we would add to do outreach for the excise tax, or are you referring to the caper that we're going to be looking at in just a bit?
Well, I don't know where it would fit, but I think it might be important to let HUD know that this is an initiative that will maybe supplement what's available for affordable housing in the future, but also, I mean, we're going to need to clarify some things that apparently from last night's meeting are still confusing to some of the people that will be voting on this in terms as to who it affects. And I mean, there will be citizen participation for passing this or not. And I don't know if it's important to tell HUD of the initiative at this time or wait until it's a done deal, one way or the other. I don't know. Just came to mind.
I think that's a good question. In this case, it's focused on the CDBG program and it's not referencing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, although I know we talked, I think there was a brief mentioning maybe in it, or at least the keeper, but maybe not. Actually, that's also.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah,
I think the citizen participation plan is sort of like an administrative document to have on file, but we could certainly add some language about the excise tax and the caper. I believe there's a leverage section in there. And that might be relevant to add. Couldn't hurt.
and as for the keeper, that's strictly CDBG. It's not related to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, so we wouldn't
No.
have anything in there.
It evaluates how we spent HUD funding over the past program year, but there is, I don't have all the narrative sections memorized, but I think there's something about local funds or like leveraging resources, which that would certainly be relevant. We can let our HUD rep know what we're up to.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say, in those sections, what we typically do is we talk about how we spent CDBG money, and then we'll talk about, and then local monies supplemented the CDBG money by paying for a different part of the program and sort of the, so we do include a lot of that information in there, but Commissioner Torres, I think that's a great idea to introduce the topic now, and if it gets approved in November, then we would actually talk about it in our action plan for next year. So that's great.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Watkins
Oh.
just joined us as well.
Kind of. It still says connecting. Thank you. I think it worked. Commissioner Watkins, can you hear us? We just,
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Glad to have you. We were
Sorry.
through just reviewing the components of the citizen participation plan. And really it was just questions or comments. We're not approving anything for this today. Are there any other questions or comments? I don't hear or see anybody that has questions, so is that a hand up, Commissioner Brock?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
Commissioner Villarreal, just, I know this is already on the Affordable Housing Office's radar, but just the idea that the more that we can proactively reach out to individuals in a non-random way, folks who are either particularly affected by a project or are particularly informed about the topic at hand. To me, it's one way that we can see a little less of the NIMBYism, where it's just the 10 most motivated people in town showing up for the public forum. But instead, we hear from a nice, more kind of scientifically, prescribed cross section of the city. To me, it's one thing I would hope to see in this engagement is a little bit more of that, like the science of choosing who the city is hearing from.
And Commissioner Brock, when you say science, can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that there's lots of sampling methodologies where people can go and talk to, it's a focus group. Is it the 10 people who just happen to pass you on the sidewalk? Or is it 10 people that the city wants to care about based on age, gender, race, income, other areas of being affected by, say, a housing program? So we know that particular people are in need of affordable housing. It would make sense to talk to those people probably more than just the average citizen in town. It would also probably make sense that if there's something that's proposed on the south side of town, we hear from people on the south side of town who are being affected, or on the north side of town, just the same. in the affordable housing office can figure out who to sample, but the idea that, I mean, I've seen year in and year out the same, say 10 to 20 people showing up at every one of the public forums, making the loudest comments in the, comment section of the New Mexican, but they may or may not be the ones who need the housing, and they are often disproportionately listened to in the process when, there are people who desperately need housing, but they might have 3 jobs and aren't able to participate as much. And it seems to me it would be wise if we can really proactively try to find ways to get their voices into the process so that the housing that's needed is built or rehabbed or whatever needs to happen.
Great points. Cody, you unmuted, did you?
Yeah, if I could
Go
respond to
ahead.
that, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Brott. I just wanted to let you know about our community engagement process for our consolidated plan for HUD. We tried to cast as wide of net as we could with our survey, reached about 500 people, and I don't really know what the breakdown of that is as far as the sampling, but we are pretty intentional with our focus groups and key informant interviews. We ran a focus group at Siler Yard, so those are affordable housing tenants. We did a focus group with youth shelters, so those are youth experiencing or formerly experiencing homelessness, as well as one with the Lifelink. So those are folks staying at La Luz who are part of like a special needs population who receive wraparound services and live in supportive housing. So we try to focus that kind of outreach to the people who are really affected by these issues and the recipients of these funds, if that helps. But I totally hear what you're saying.
That's fantastic. I think maybe just in the document itself, I think there's a table, public notice summary table.
Yeah,
Maybe it could just be included in there just to highlight all those good things you mentioned.
awesome. Thank you so much for that feedback.
And I think it was also not administered by staff. We had a contractor that assisted with that outreach, which I think really helped in terms of the capacity to do focus groups and outreach to stakeholders. So I guess that's another thing, like, do we need to put that in there that we actually, in order to have, well, specifically for the consolidated plan, that we would prioritize, I don't know, hiring consultants to be able to help us with that outreach. And we'll continue to do that, right, Cody? Or Alex? You both raised your
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we should create, I don't want to call it an aspirational category, but maybe like the not so bound to the timeline category where we can just list all of the other ways that we have pursued outreach and community feedback. And then we can say we're always going to do that, but maybe a little light on the details of exactly when it'll happen, just so we're not suddenly unable to do something and then we're in trouble with our plan.
Commissioner Torres.
And if you did language specific outreach, I would include that in that piece as well.
I think I saw that. Didn't we include that? I feel like I saw that. Cody.
I don't know if I described what I described to Commissioner Brott, but one of our consultants is a bilingual Spanish speaker, and I believe they work maybe with even Chainbreaker or something for one of the focus groups. So, but yeah, we can certainly add that. The language that you might be thinking of, Chair Villarreal, is sort of the city standard for offering bilingual services through the clerk's office.
Yeah.
Or translation, excuse me, interpretation.
Commissioner Torres, did you see that? It's kind of the legal basic requirements of the city, and it's usually by request.
And what about Native communities? Are we doing anything in a Native language for different Native populations, or we're not going there yet, or can't go there?
Commissioner Torres, because our funds are limited to city limits where we don't have any Native communities, we have never prioritized that outreach, which doesn't mean that Native folks don't use the services, but they're accessing them through the community providers that they're already working with. But I love that. I always love that idea. I think we want as many people as possible to know. And ever since the Midtown, working with the Midtown engagement partners, I have so much better contacts with the Indigenous Center and some of the other groups. And so, and I believe I can't even remember at this point. I know we sent our survey link kind of throughout that whole network of folks, which isn't good enough, but it is the first time we've ever done that. So, next time we'll figure out how to make it even more meaningful.
Great, thank you.
And speaking of that, I know that the Indigenous Center was engaged through the con planning process. Our consultants worked with them I believe they organized a focus group as well.
Yep, that's a good point. And we also have to remember that urban Indigenous populations, they don't speak necessarily the same language. So it would be good to find out from the Indigenous Center if there are folks that, because they could request it, really, Alex, if there was a group of folks that requested some interpretation for Tewa, they could do that. It would just have to be by request. I think Commissioner Todes, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Brock.
So, yeah, thank you. Just one more point was, at the first hearing that was held, I think it was 6-7 weeks ago for the excise tax proposal that was at City Hall, there was a woman there who was speaking in Spanish, and there was another woman there who was kind of just informally translating, interpreting for her. And it was a very bad summaries of what she was actually saying. And I thought it was kind of an opportunity missed in terms of what the woman was contributing. So I don't know if there's a way for this office also to kind of proactively do it. So it's not just by request, because maybe that woman didn't know she needed to request an interpreter. So just to add that to the kind of reach out.
I totally agree with you, Commissioner Broad. I think that even us, we as counselors requesting that, if we don't meet that deadline, then we are basically told too bad. So I've requested that anytime we have a topic, especially the ones that have public hearings that we know are either, a big interest or or controversial, that we should expect to have those services at every meeting. It's still, I think, a work in progress that we need to prioritize that. And it's not the prioritization of the Affordable Housing Office. I think they think that's important. It's just overall our meetings, our governing body meetings need to have that access in various ways, including ASL. So thank you for that. And it improved last night for sure, because we said it way in advance that they needed to make sure that there were interpreters there. So all right, so anything good to have. We also have Commissioner Padilla joining us. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. I just saw your text now. But
Okay.
I think we got you in. So we just finished talking about the citizen participation plan. And we're not voting, but this was just an opportunity to weigh in, share your thoughts and comments. So I think if there aren't any other questions or comments, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item 6B, which is request for approval of the 2022-2023 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, also known as CAPER, for submittal to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, as a condition to the City of Santa Fe's Community Development Block Grant. And I'll hand it over to Cody.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me share my screen. And let me know when y'all see it. Thank you.
We
Cool.
see it. Good.
Excellent. Thank you. So the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report is evaluating all of our HUD's fund spending over the last program year. So that'd be July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. And although the report that was submitted in the packet only covers HUD funding, we decided to also add the trust fund updates since kind of been in the news lately. And then also I think it's our office's job to be more transparent about how that funding is, and we're going to be more proactive about getting that out there. So basically, this is just going to give you an in-depth look at what's been happening in terms of expenditures and outcomes over the program year. And I apologize that this presentation wasn't uploaded or circulated via email. I was working on the tables up to the last minute, but I will send it to you all when we get off this meeting and upload it in PrimeGov for the future public meetings. So let's begin with a breakdown of CDBG over the last year. First, we have our housing activities. The Housing Trust Mortgage Principal Reduction Program, they generated $102,400 of program income. And for you new commissioners, program income is when a activity, specifically for this activity, when a household sells or transfers a home that was purchased with a CDBG funded down payment assistance loan, they pay that loan back to the housing trust and it's recycled into new loans. So over the year, they generated $102,400 and expended all of it, providing loans to 4 households. HomeWise was awarded $300,000 for mortgage principal reduction in program year 2021. But throughout that year, they generated $275,000 worth of program income and never tapped into their entitlement. So we amended that to extend and allow them to spend that over the last program year. So they were able to tap in, well, pardon me, sorry. Over the program year, they generated $271,901 of program income. They expended all of that, and we were able to tap into their entitlement into the tune of $251,099. And we're able to help a total of 9 households. They originally proposed that they would help 10 households with the $300,000, but instead only 9 with the $523,000 total. And I think this demonstrates a greater amount of subsidy needed for low-income households earning 80% AMI or less to make the monthly payments reasonable, with the higher median income or median home price. The next one is the Habitat for Humanity Home Repair Program. They were awarded $100,000 and expended all of it. They have proposed serving a minimum of 12 households and managed to serve 14. For this activity, this is one of the rare occurrences where we actually have photo evidence. So I was going to quickly show you some before and after pictures to demonstrate the good work that they do. Pardon me. So this was a deck that needed rehabilitating. The roof was falling down and the siding was a little flimsy. Here's some before pictures. You could see that it was a bit unsafe, judging by how cautious this dog is looking in the corner here. And here's the rehab deck with a beautiful new roof, new siding, and a nice safe place for the dog to play. This is a more typical job for this program, which is repairing roofs or replacing them altogether. This roof was leaking. As you can see, they have a big tarp and there's a water pooling up in the middle. Underneath that tarp, it was severe water damage, leaking roof. And this is the after picture, brand new, beautiful roof, complete with some new canales. Here's a little side-by-side of a damaged tub that was leaking and brand new tub and shower. So this is the kind of work I just figured I'd throw that in there since we fund them every year. The next activity is the Lamplighter Inn Motel conversion project. CDBG, they were awarded a CDBG award of $295,094, and they expended it all. So the CDBG portion of this activity is closed. There's going to be 58 units on the property, and we put 58 units because that's what was served by the asbestos remediation. There's an asterisk there because this project is obviously currently in progress, and these outcomes are not reported in the HUD database. Little update on this project. The construction drawings are close to being finalized, and they hope to start the bids process next month, start construction in November, and hopefully be completed by August 2024. I do believe that they are going to do like a phased occupancy. There's 3 buildings on the property, so they're hoping to get the first building with have tenants move in by sometime in December, I think. Next is the public services. We have the Santa Fe Suite Supportive Services. This was funded with $581,333 of CARES Act funds, which was entitled through our CDBG grant. So this actually qualifies as CDBG CV coronavirus. The CARES Act is not subject to our 15% public service cap because it's not attached to an entitlement award. And this award was able to retroactively reimburse for costs to September 3rd, 2020. So these funds actually have been used to reimburse for costs starting January 1st, 2021. And we're paying for case management, wraparound services, and referrals for the case managers at Santa Fe Suites. They've provided that to a total of 102 tenants at Santa Fe Suites. This is still ongoing, and they have about $70,000 still left to spend over the next program year. Next activity is Consuelos Place Shelter. Typically, we can't spend this much money on a public service, as you all know, but these were recycled funds from 2019, 2020, which due to COVID, HUD removed the public service cap for funds from those years. We were able to obligate it to Consuelos. They spent that during the first half of the program year, and during which time 288 folks stayed there. Next activity is Youth Shelters Transitional Living and Street Outreach Program. They were awarded 20 grand and spent it all. This program's activity is closed. In their application, they said they're going to support 215 youth experiencing homelessness, but instead served 91. Although this is a pretty big discrepancy, according to their program managers, this is actually indicative of a good outcome because they're seeing a lot less youth on the street, and they are crediting this to the success of their rapid rehousing program. And then they're also hypothesizing that there's a decrease in transient homeless youth now that we're sort of post-COVID. The next one is Interfaith Shelters Summer Safe Haven. They were awarded $35,000 and spent it all. They originally proposed that they would serve 160 individuals experiencing homelessness, and instead served 102. This is because they reprogrammed in efforts to address the growing encampment issue in Santa Fe. So they ended their Women's Summer Safe Haven early and opened their doors to men. And this led to a decreased number of women served during the program year. The final public service is Adelante School Liaison Program. They were awarded $35,000 and spent almost all of it, and proposed to serve 800 youth and their families, and served just a little over that with 804. Moving on to public infrastructure and improvements. Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority's Ocate Apartments was awarded $100,000. For all of our activities, CDBG funded activities, we have to conduct an environmental review. We weren't really able to lock down a scope of work with them because currently they're in very early phases. And we went back and forth for a while and couldn't find a scope of work, and they ultimately decided to forfeit the award. We had enough time, however, to reprogram that into the RFA that you all recommended funding for earlier this year. So that money is reobligated to a different activity. The final activity is El Camino Real Academy Safe Routes to School Trail. It had a full total CDBG budget of $857,495. So far, they've spent $84,484. I'm happy to say that the 90% designs are complete. And yesterday I was at the evaluation committee for that. they're finalizing the designs, and construction should begin hopefully sometime early next year, I believe. And I believe I saw a cameo from Commissioner Hughes over there at the review committee. And I will say the Safe Routes to School coordinators, Tim Rogers and Elena Kayak, were pretty ecstatic to have these funds go to that project. This was a #1 project priority for the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee's 2018 action plan. So it's taken 5 years before they could find funding for this. So it was pretty exciting. And then, of course, program admin, 120,955, and we spent it all. So over the year, we had $3,172,340 budgeted for CDBG and spent $2,177,999. And the unspent funds are going to continue into the next year. And I will pause for any questions you might have before I move on to the trust fund.
Thank you, Cody, for all those details. And just to be clear, the CDBG allows us for program administration, whereas the Affordable Housing Trust Fund does not. And so if there's a remaining balance, like you just indicated, we can carry that over into the next program year? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so I'll, with the exception of the Adelante that had a little bit of balance left, these are all still ongoing, and we've amended and extended the term on those contracts so they can spend it over the next year.
Great. And let's see. Well, I have some other questions, but I'll open it up to the commission to see if you have any questions about and this is program year 2022, but it's really fiscal year 2022 through 2023, correct?
Yeah, the HUD program year is a year behind the city's fiscal year. So it gets a little confusing sometimes.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies for being late in joining the call earlier. Cody, in reference to the Habitat for Humanity work, you showed specifically the roof work repairs that were being done. I've got a question about that because the photograph that you showed, the before, showed significant what appeared to me to be damage to what would be the ceiling of that room. Was our work only for roofing, or did it include other interior repairs that would have been caused by the roofing damage, or was it strictly roofing repair that we were funding?
I believe it was. I'm sorry, I can't actually speak to that. But let me look to see if they have any interior repair after photos. But as far as I know, I think it was strictly the roof, but it might be all encompassing.
Okay. I mean, because that's fine if you don't recall. I don't recall. Maybe some of the my fellow commissioners will recall from that presentation. I don't recall it being interior repairs also, but I remember the ask being for roofing repairs. I mean, so that was just a small portion of the work that was needed for that house. I was wondering, does the rest of the rest of the repairs get done out of other monies that they have, or does the homeowner live with what they got?
When they submit their, sorry, Director Ladd, you go ahead. When they submit their application to us, they just apply for generally $100,000, and then it's case by case, whoever needs the assistance. I'd imagine that they probably, for some reason, they do write into their application that it's capped at $14,000 per household. And then sometimes they find other funds from other resources if it goes over that budget. But I doubt that they would just fix the roof and leave the interior ceiling like that.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think they always try to coordinate their work with the other agencies. So if they're fixing the roof, but they see that the windows really need weatherization or stripping or something, they'll then bring in totally forgetting the name of that group that does that.
Yeah.
Actually, Pasquale's still on the call, isn't he? He might even be able to answer that question. But yeah,
was gonna say that. I don't want to put you on the spot, Pascual, but if you had any, if you're listening and can answer our question. And we don't hear you, but
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Oh, can you hear me now?
yes,
Yeah.
you want to introduce
Can you-
yourself?
Sorry, it's on my laptop. But from what I understand, it's critical house repair. And it is specifically with roofs. If we see that there's damage or anything to like walls or anything, we also repair those. That's part of the remediation. It's so that the homeowner is completely repaired.
Great. Thank you. And did you want to introduce yourself, Pascual, what you do at Habitat?
Sure. So my name is Pascual Hernandez. I'm the volunteer and family services coordinator for Santa Fe Habitat.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you for the information.
Great,
Commissioner,
thank
Padilla,
you.
did that help?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments from commissioners before we move on to the next part of the presentation? I don't hear or see anybody, so we will move on.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh,
Next is
wait, one question for Cody.
Yes.
I was just curious, I didn't hear it for some reason. When you said that we reprogrammed the funding that was supposed to go to the Ocate apartment project and the Civic Housing Authority forfeited that amount, it was reprogrammed to, what did you say? I didn't,
Oh, so I just put that money into the bucket that we used for this the request for application this year. So typically we don't know the actual entitlement amount, but it's gonna be roughly 600,000. And then we factor in our 20% program admin cap, which brings it down to about 480,000. So what we had to allocate was 580,000. That makes sense.
so this would be put back into the funding. pot.
Yeah,
Okay, I don't know why, but I didn't hear it and I thought you
Sorry.
had a specific program that I didn't remember.
I probably could have explained that with less words.
No, that's good. That was good.
Alright.
And then just curious about youth shelters. If they utilize the money, there were less folks they served, so does that money then get funneled in a different way, or there was more funding per individual? I know that's minutia because really I see it as like operational support, but it is like very specific to the number of folks served. So how does that work? It's a small amount, but I was just curious.
So that pays partial salaries for street outreach and transitional living program managers. So they are still doing the same amount of work, even though the street outreach folks are encountering less youth on the streets. But the transitional living program has the same amount of consistent occupancy.
Thank you for that clarity. That was helpful.
No
All right.
problem.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, a little bit more complicated. We have the first bucket, we entitled the Capital Improvements, Rehabilitation, Construction and Development, and Community Solutions managed a contract for Santa Fe Suites capital improvements and were awarded $910,000 and have expended $95,602 to date. This is ongoing. This contract has been extended through the next year. So far, that money has been used to install a security system, including cameras, and to repair culverts to have the storm management system be compliant. They have a whole laundry list of other capital improvements that they intend to do, including unit kitchen renovations, parking lot repairs, things like that. Oh, an entirely new roof, I think. So they intend to spend that money down by the end of the program year. The next project that was funded was HomeWise Los Canales project. I believe this is located off of West Alameda somewhere. And the lot is 9 existing rental units that are badly needed to be rehabilitated and improved. HomeWise acquired the property and intend to add 5 new additional units and then convert it to home ownership. The 9 existing renters there are all working with HomeWise and very excited to work with them to receive down payment assistance loans and become homeowners of the places that they were living. Before these houses could be improved and the homes sold, though, they had to submit a quite a few applications to the city of Santa Fe. I think including one to rezone from R5 to R7 so they could build the additional homes, and then a development plan. The entitlement process took a little longer, so their program manager, Jamie Hermio, formally requested an extension to this contract. So even though they haven't spent the money down, they haven't touched the 700,000. They plan to over the next year. I think all the entitlement process is complete, so they're eager to start spending this money and help these people out. The next project is Bella Luz, aka the Lamplighter and Motel conversion project. They were awarded 800,000 of trust funds. So far, I've spent 87,603. The trust fund has been used, or is going to be used, primarily for developer fees. So now that the construction plans are being finalized, these funds should be spent down over the next year while construction is being complete. The next activity is the Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority's Paseo del Sol Apartments. Little context, this property is a 1997 LIHTC project, a low-income housing tax credit project, and that had fulfilled its affordability period requirement and was at risk of converting to market rate. So the Housing Authority is preserving this apartment complex as affordable and use these funds to bring the property up to modern code requirements. I think it was specifically used to replace the roof on all the buildings, replace the heaters, restucco the buildings, and install new appliances in the buildings. So that they can preserve 80 units of affordable housing, which is very commendable. The next one is the Civic Housing Authority's Via Consuelo contract, which I think we all know and love because the scope on this changed a couple times. We finally landed on using it for financing, and they've spent it down, and 100 units have benefited from that contract. The Housing Trust applied for $20,000 to be used for schematic design for senior affordable housing. This has been spent down, and we have the schematic designs. I'm not sure what the status is of the actual project, but I'm sure they are continuing it. The Housing Trust also used trust funds for the Arroyo Este project, and they used it to pay for a third-party construction management. They spent that down. It's closed, and they have 15 homes on that property. The next project is Arbor Lodgings El Yunco Senior Residence Schematic Design. They were awarded $200,000 of trust funds. They spent down 54,354. I think somewhere along the way they lost site control of this project. We do have the schematic designs, but we closed this out and recycled the remaining funds back into the trust fund. Next is our down payment assistance programs. First is the Housing Trust. They were awarded $500,000 and utilized $454,092. This is ongoing because we are going to amend their current year contract and let them use that remaining balance. They propose to provide loans to 15 households and instead manage to provide loans to 13 first-time home buyers. HomeWise down payment assistance, they were awarded $400,000, utilized $350,000, and we're going to attach that $50,000 onto their new current year contract. They proposed to help 10 households, and they did so. Finally, we have the two Habitat for Humanity down payment assistance contracts. One's from year 21-22 is 80 grand, and the current or previous year is 125,000. These are ongoing, and we've extended the terms on both of these contracts so they could utilize these funds. I think they use them on their own property to buy down the market rate of the house. And I think both of these projects got tied up into the entitlement process. And one of these contracts is going to be used for the Elsa Street lot. Finally, we have the bedrock of our trust fund projects, which is the rental and housing assistance. I won't run through all of them, but we have Santa Fe Public Schools Adelante Family Assistance Fund, St. Elizabeth's Santa Fe Suites Rental Subsidy Program, YouthWorks Housing First Rental Program, LifeLink Rental Assistance Program, the Coalition's Homeless Early Intervention Program, and the Recovery Center's Bridge Home Sober Living Program. The total award between these 6 programs was $1,065,500. They expended almost all of it with $1,043,970. The only one that didn't spend it down was the Coalition's early intervention program, and we extended that so they have time to use those funds in the community. And in total, they assisted 575 households, all of which exceeded their proposed amount, except for Adelante, but who proposed 40 and served 35. But of that 35, that consists of 82 children. In total, we funded $5,398,597 worth of trust fund programs this year, and expended $2,616,115.
Thank
And
you.
I'll pause.
Cody.
Yep.
And with the some of the extensions, do you believe that we would reach the 5,300,000 mark?
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty. So any questions, comments on this section? Which is not part of the caper, but it is just an update for us. Commissioner Torres.
So does it mean that we lost potential senior housing from El Junco? Or is that going to be picked up by somebody else later on, or what happened with that?
I'm gonna refer to Director Ladd. I think she talked with the developers about that.
Yeah, Commissioner Torres, this was also, you probably remember the application, it was also a motel conversion, but they were gonna focus it on senior folks. They came in and I believe they asked for 2 million, and the Community Development Commission felt like they're not quite there. They didn't have kind of enough of their details figured out. And so the decision was made to fund the design and the site plan, because that's always a sticking point. It's a lot easier to raise money for a project if you have an actual concept of your project to show your funders, as opposed to just like, well, here's a property and here's what we could do. And so I think we were trying to kind of help them, give them a little leg up in that process. This group was not local. They were a collaboration of developers from all over the country. They've done these projects in lots of other communities. Their resume was great, but it was a little bit of a strange proposal to begin with. And so I think the skepticism of the CDC was well-founded, because at the end of the day, they could not work with the seller to keep the deal intact. And it's commercial real estate. It's pretty tough. It's not unusual for the timing not to work out on one side or the other. The only reason we could get Santa Fe Suites and Lamplighter done is because the sellers were really motivated to make it work, and we negotiated, and I think Encorum may have given the Lamplighter folks like 3 different extensions, and meaning paying them extra. So it just was one of those things. It just didn't work out.
And this is the one in front of La Resolana, right? Is that the one?
No, this was the Green Tree, which is further down, I think, right?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, the one in front of La Resolana is Days Inn.
Yeah.
And that one is still a prospect. So we'll see what happens with that one.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions? Comments? Commissioner Brock?
Yeah, one question is, does this committee get to see the plans, that the developers submit, in terms of just looking at them from a, is this serving the community? Does this make sense from an architect's perspective or business perspective? Like, is this a good housing solution? Do we get to see those plans?
Commissioner Brock, the application asks for a lot of project details, and we don't require it, but we strongly encourage any design work that's been done to be submitted with the application. Sometimes it's like in this case, they hadn't done anything, so they didn't have anything to show us until we helped to fund some of the pre-development work so they could put the design together. But that's a great question. And usually a lot of times, like when we come in to the picture, when the funding comes in a little bit later, they will have a very specific plan. And I believe when we were looking at the applications for the capital outlay funding, we required in that application that they provide designs that we could look at. And it was clear that the Days Inn design was not as well baked as the Lamplighter project. So that's why it was chosen. But that's a great question. I don't know, Commissioner Padilla might want to weigh in. He's the architect in residence, and he's been doing this work longer than anybody, including me.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Alexandra, I believe what we have, and Commissioner Brott, what we have at times, we have seen drawings that were that are proposed for the projects. It's hit and miss. I know the ask is always there, and it always helps us in seeing what they are proposing, whether or not, as you say, does it all really make sense? I mean, is it money being well spent? Is it money that'll be spent to serve the community? At the end of the day, what is the final, not only aesthetic look of it, but how does it really function for the end users? We get it hit and miss. There's occasions where we've got more architectural as opposed to full engineering, depending on what they're asking for. But it's not where we see it on every project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Padilla and Commissioner Brott. I was wondering, are we required for the CDBG to do site visits?
We are, and we typically do those right around now. We have them all scheduled for, I believe, the first and second week of September.
And does staff do site visits for any of the recipients of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund monies?
We do that as well.
And I also know that we have, as a commission, had some visits, informal visits to our partners. And I think now that we have new members and some of us can go to some of those other visits, was it last year? I feel like it was last year. Maybe we could think about that in the future to do some more visits, not as official site visits, I know that's different, but actually getting to visit the sites that have benefited from these two funding sources.
Yeah, absolutely. We could definitely arrange some tours like we did last year.
Great, yeah. And then the other thing, just a constituent had brought up they were concerned about the holdup for the Lamplighter project, and that for various reasons that's been delayed. However, it doesn't mean that we are not tracking the funding that they received from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There's delays that occur, especially for construction. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, in terms of tracking the funding, we reimburse for costs. So we don't just give them the $800,000 of trust funds outright. They have to submit invoices with backup docs and before we actually pay that out. And yeah, we're working, since we have so many different funding sources tied up with that project, we're working with them pretty closely to look at the timeline. I would recommend your constituent maybe view the recording of the Quality of Life Committee meeting from August 2nd, where Jeff Curry, the project manager from JL Gray, provided a pretty good update and what's occurred so far and what we can expect as far as the timeline.
That's a good point. I'll make sure to include you just in case they have follow-up questions, but
Yeah,
essentially
absolutely.
all of these are accounted for. And so do they all work as a reimbursement scenario?
Yeah, that's how our office works or process or conducts our funding. absolutely. So as just to provide a whole update on that, we have the CDBG that's fully expended because it's been used for asbestos remediation. We have all the backup docs for that. The trust fund, we anticipate that being spent down over the next year as construction commences and it's used for developer fees, as well as the capital outlay, which is going to be used for construction costs. And then the 2 million of ARPA that has been expended at this point because it was used for acquisition.
Great, thank you for that, just to put it on the record. Anything else from the commission? Questions? Also, any questions about the actual document? This was the presentation, but the keeper. If
Oh.
there's any,
Madam Chair, if I may, I actually do have one more slide.
oh, great, thank
Pardon
you.
me. So I just want to give you a timeline of this. All the comments from today will be incorporated, but the official public comment period is August 28th, next Monday through September 15th. On the 28th, it will be noticed in New Mexican. Our communications team is going to put out a press release announcing it. The caper will go before the Finance Committee on September 5th, the Quality of Life on September 6th, and then culminating at a public hearing at City Council on September 13th, where I'll provide a similar presentation as this one.
Thank you, Cody. And that presentation would be specific to caper with the CDBG funds, not the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
I could absolutely, I intended to keep the trust fund slide in there.
Yeah, I would just be cautioned so people don't get confused that the kind of the regulatory side of caper and that it really corresponds with CDBG. And so folks don't confuse that that's also part of how we fund the Affordable Housing Trust Funds or how we utilize those. So
Yeah, I'll make sure to make it pretty explicit.
any other questions? Did you want us also, if there was any questions about the document itself, the caper, there was any questions or
Yes, please.
comments?
And you can always email them to me if you haven't had time to review the document quite yet.
Any other thoughts on that? Questions? Maybe if you could stop sharing screen, Cody, just make sure I see everybody. All right, I think I would just say check for typos. There was a few. For some reason, I don't know why I felt like I saw in the document that the light, when we were referencing the lamplighter project, that it said it'd be completed August 2023, but
Oh.
you said 2024, but just double check, because for some reason I
Okay.
thought 23.
Thank you for that.
The question I always have is the demographic section. So not helpful. The way it's like structured is, it doesn't really show, I think, the who is being served, because of the way, you know, they calculate, what do they, let me just get to that document here. It's on page, let's see, where is it?
Page
10. 10 of the keeper. So they break it down by, you know, racial, like government areas of how they break down the racial composition. So white says 1,168. And I was just curious because I know the way they break that down further is Hispanic and non-Hispanic below. But when they added those numbers up, it didn't total 1,168. So I was just curious if there was.
I think that's because not all Hispanic people identify as white.
Okay. And why do they put at the bottom versus under white? I'm just always confused with that because it doesn't. Well, I just never like the way we break down race in the country, but then I'm just curious, is that kind of their structure of how to break down race and ethnic composition?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
So that total is all the breakdowns of ethnicities, and then the Hispanic and non-Hispanic. Is this breakdown a little further?
For all
Yeah,
categories. Okay,
yes.
great. Okay, thank you for that.
I can make a note of that in the narrative section so it's more clear.
That would be good. I think that's it. I was just trying to figure out, there's a section that we talk about that we have a remaining balance. And you said they'll have additional time to spend on the remaining funds. Okay. Sorry, I'm just making sure that we cover that those will be expended eventually. Anything else for folks? Those are just my questions, clarification. And maybe at the beginning, when you put 2022 program year, you could also put the fiscal year 2022-23 like you did in the other section of the document. And I think those were all my comments. Anything else from folks? All right, so at this point, what is the wish of the commission? Commissioner Watkins, we didn't hear you, but I saw your. You want to say that again? Or someone else can make a motion? Anyone?
I don't know if this will stay on all my devices here. Everything seems to be clicking on and off of its own free will, but I think you're looking for a motion to approve or adopt. Is it adopt or approve?
To approve, recommend approval.
Okay. I recommend approval. I'm sorry. Is that adequate, or do you want me to say something else?
I would
Sorry.
say recommend approval of the 2022-23 consolidated annual performance evaluation report.
So moved.
There you go. That works. All right, we have a motion.
Good.
And I think Commissioner Hughes had a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's get a roll call, please, Tony.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, Villarreal,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Brott,
Yes.
Commissioner Padilla,
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have a presentation, so I'll move on to matters from staff.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I just wanted to give some credit to Commissioner Padilla, who has been volunteering his time to do some pro bono architecture work for one of the city's safe outdoor spaces. He's working with the Salvation Army, I believe. So just wanted to give him some kudos in this meeting. And then also, I believe you have all met Florence Frank, who's a new member of our team, and maybe the June meeting, but she has come on board this week or maybe last week. And yeah, just wanted to introduce her again. She's gonna help us make some more impact and work on some workforce housing. So we're lucky to have her. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself again, Florence.
Yeah, why not? Especially because my Wi-Fi was very bad last time. I remember I tried to get myself in a spot that was both pretty and with good Wi-Fi, and only got one of them. And I was not as acclimated to the altitude then. So yes, I started last week. I've been here for 2 weeks, and I'll be around for 2 years. So I think particularly for this committee, a lot of different policy development and programs coming up. So please let me know if you have any questions. I know I'll be reaching out to all of you at some point for something. So excited to be here.
Welcome. We're excited to have you, and I know staff is definitely excited to have another support on the team, and excited that you're also working on some special projects that hopefully we'll get to talk about later. Yes. Anything else from staff? No.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Great. All right. So moving on to matters from the commission. Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, can staff give us a couple sentences on the status of the Alto Street project?
Madam Chair, I can speak to that a little bit. We just had a milestone this week, actually, or last week, got through one of the land use challenges. So just moving forward with
What was the challenge?
executing. The challenge was that there's a 30% plus slope on the site that looked man-made. It looked like when they widened the Alto Street roadbed that they had cut from underneath and then piled it up on top to make the road wider. But land use wouldn't let them move forward with their design, which required incorporating the slope to fit the 5 units on there until they could demonstrate that the slope was man-made. So they had to do some kind of engineering study that I don't know how they do that, but somehow they figure out doing the core samples, I think, kind of how the sediment was laid down and whether it was piled up or actually laid down as a process of nature. And so they were able to show that it was man-made. So that's exciting.
Now what?
They have to get historic approval. And then I think they can go for their development plan, and then I think they can go right to building permit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other, let's see, we have Commissioner Padilla, hands up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Brock, that was a project, the Alto Street project, that we had, I thought, fairly detailed plans for us to review when we were looking at a couple of projects. That was one that had detailed plans. It surprises me that those plans would not have looked at or thought about that 30% grade differential, which everybody knows, well, in the development and design arena, that you cannot disturb or build within those 30%. So even with, really pretty pictures that were provided to us, those type of things we would have never have seen because there was not a topographic survey provided with it. So, so your question, as far as do we get plans and details, et cetera, we did. That one was selected after deliberation on a couple of projects. That one was selected as the one the CDC would move forward supporting. So that was an instance of kind of responding to your question earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Padilla. Any other comments from commissioners? Any other matters? No? All right, matters from the chair. Just wanted to, if you don't know already, the high-end excise tax for affordable housing ordinance passed last night almost unanimously. There was one vote against it. That was from Councilor Lee Garcia. He just felt like no taxes. We shouldn't have more taxes imposed on the public. So he voted against it. We also passed the resolution that's a corresponding document that basically secures the ballot measure language. It will be on the ballot. So there was a lot of public testimony, about 2 hours. And yeah, so moving forward to the next phase of making sure the public is educated about the what this does and what it doesn't do. And I think there was one thing, maybe Alex, you could just share about the minor amendment we made. And it was also kind of based on a conversation we had with the CDC members when we heard this item. So maybe you could just share that. There was a little confusion, but we worked it out because Alex came in to save the day to explain what the amendment actually did. So
there was language in the exception or exemption, I guess is the right word. The ordinance defines the projects or the kinds of transactions that this doesn't apply to. And the intent was to just say this will never impact affordability because it does not apply to homes that are part of the city's affordable housing program or inclusionary zoning. And the original version had a lot of extra language in there. It's called out Santa Fe Homes Program and HOP programs, and then sort of listed all these different kinds of deed restrictions or what you could call various kinds of liens. And you know, when you are listing stuff out, you either have to be 100% sure you're exhaustive or general enough that you don't create a situation where a very specific thing that's not named in a specific list all of a sudden seems like it's not exempt. So the city attorney and I had sort of hemmed and hawed and tried to figure it out and just simplify the language. But the other issue was that the way it was originally written, it referred to a project that was subject to any of those controls. And then it, at the same sentence at the end, referred to a unit. So that was a little bit confusing. My concern was that a project, and this came out of a question, Commissioner Padilla, that you had asked when we talked about it the last meeting, which was if a project, any residential project over 11 units is subject to inclusionary zoning and will include affordably priced units. So for a market rate project that's in a expensive part of town where the market rate units may be priced over $1 million, I was concerned that the language was sort of implying that somehow, since the whole project was subject to an affordable housing agreement, that would get lumped in with all those other controls. And so that developer would say, hey, the exemption covers my whole project, every home in my project, because the whole project was covered by this agreement, even though the affordability restrictions are just specific to the affordable homes. And so we were trying to kind of just clarify, but also simplify so that it was just very specific that this is a home that has an affordability restriction will never pay this tax. So, but it did get a little bit confusing in the middle of the conversation.
It worked out. And then we also, so that passed. That was, I don't know if anyone had any questions about that. We also had other ballot question considerations. There was 8 of them that came from the Charter Review Commission, and only 2 passed after a very lengthy discussion, and we finished our meeting around 2 a.m. So it was a long meeting. That's why I'm not very articulate today. I'm very tired. But I don't know if anyone
Gonna
had.
miss those, Counselor?
What's that?
Aren't you gonna miss those meetings?
Not that. No, I'm not actually. I have to admit, I'm not gonna miss those long meetings, but I don't know if anyone had any questions about those items.
Madam Chair, I think the comment that I'd like to make is I'm glad that council moved forward approving all of the proposals, because now it goes to the voters for them to decide. You know, I know there's a lot of consternation and speaking about the excise tax and so forth, but I think not to move that forward for vote by the public would have been a big mistake. So I'm glad that is moving forward.
Thank you. I agree. And that was the goal, really to get it on the ballot. There is definitely work to be done, though, to clarify what the excise tax does and doesn't do. Commissioner Watkins.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to follow up on what Commissioner Padilla said and ask, is there a role for us either as individuals or members of this commission to write letters to the editor or do any of those kinds of things supporting this? I mean, my apologies, I've been out of town for almost 2 months. And so, I only know what I saw in the newspaper clippings that somebody sent to me, which probably wasn't all of it, but interesting comments in the paper now about, well, it's not enough, it's the wrong thing, it's this, that, and the other. Is there any way for us to sort of, I don't know, is there any role for us, either as individuals or as commissioners, to say, let's not kill the possible because it's not perfect. You see where I'm getting at? We
Yeah,
need to do
I
something
totally
with
get
these
it.
lists.
Well, I think as individuals, not as your role as a commissioner, you can certainly write op-ed or share your perspective as an individual, not so much. I think it probably wouldn't be it might not be a good plan to, target yourself as a commissioner taking a stance on it. Although we did pass it. So I don't know. I think getting involved would be kind of on an individual level. And then Cody just shared a link to, what was that? Oh, thanks, Cody. There's I hadn't seen that yet, but there's an actual committee, a group of folks working together called United for Affordable Housing. And that's really just like to make sure that people know what the excise tax does and show which groups are supportive of it. Last night, I just really emphasized the work that we do, to try to make hard decisions when there's always limited funds. And that we're always up against that. There's the growth of the need, and then there's not the growth of the fund, and we need a permanent funding source. So Alex, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, as Commissioner Watkins was speaking, I mean, I think one voice that's really powerful coming from this commission is, and you spoke about this last night, like really understanding the power and the impact of this funding, but also speaking to the fact that these funding decisions are not made by the city, they're not made by staff, they're not made by the governing body. The governing body approves them ultimately, but they're made by this group, right? So I don't know, I can ask Erin McSherry if she thinks there'd be a conflict of interest if the commission wanted to draft a letter from all of them just saying, please get to you don't even have to tell people how to vote. You could just say, please get to the polls and vote. And here's what we have to say about how important this money is for the people of Santa Fe. And I could ask her if the commission is interested in kind of doing something like that.
I think that's a good plan. Yeah, is it like concerted effort just to talk about like our charge as a CDC and the importance of it and how that funding gets leveraged, and also kind of there is a regulatory frame here. It's not like funding goes to administrative for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that we use every dollar and it's leveraged 3 times, and that's a requirement too. So I think there's a lot of things we could say as a group. I was just thinking like individually, I think it's also like to be informed about what's happening with the link that Cody sent. Yeah, and I think there'll be efforts and needs to make sure that the information out there is accurate, because there's already misinformation that's been printed in the paper by the association. So yeah. So if you have any questions or want to reach out to brainstorm that more, let me know, and you can definitely reach out to us. But yeah, it's one tool of many things that we need to do. So just want to emphasize that it's not the only thing, but it's something that I think we've been in discussion for a while. So and
Can I just follow up with one comment? I think it's a great idea if Erin thinks it's appropriate for the commission to do that, and also for us as individuals. And I would be more than happy to help draft those things, and even go so far as to provide talking points to those who need to write letters. Just seems to me like this is something we really need to do. Thank you.
That would be great. Yeah, and we actually have some talking points that maybe we should share with folks, because if anyone ends up potentially contacting you, because I know you're on the commission, then you'd have an ability to share the facts. If that's what you all think would be helpful. And Alex has that already. It was actually a presentation. Maybe there's information in the presentation that would be helpful for you all.
I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Great. Sounds good. All right, so that's all I have for today. And I think with that, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 20th. Is that still is that the correct date still?
That is correct, yes.
All right. And we are adjourned at 5:01. And please, I hope we can meet in person next time. It'd really be great if we can make that happen, or a hybrid if possible.
Yeah, we'll try to work with Director Brown to make sure we get a TV in that conference room.
Great. All right. Take care, everyone. Great to see you.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank you.